Sozzio. Whenever you're ready, you may begin.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the invitation to speak to you about some of my Army experiences. I hope you will find it interesting. The events took place over 60 years ago when I was between the ages of 22 and 25. Now, if you've done your math, you know I am 88 years old. This log I have with me has helped me with my memory. I was drafted in September 1942 from New Jersey. I took my basic training in Camp Crowder, Missouri. After basic training, I was chosen to work at the 800 Signal Training Corps. I worked in the office, and one of my duties was every month to have special court martials. And since I was a graduate of Drake College, I was able to take shorthand and notes for the prosecutor, and then he would be able to write up the report. In January, a notice came to our office that the Transportation Corps was looking for transportation experienced people. Since I had worked in a trucking company before I was drafted, I requested a transfer, and it was granted. And so then I moved from Camp Crowder down to Camp Lochet, New Orleans, and from there, after about 3 weeks, by April, I was in Camp Kilmer, New Jersey. Then we took a train ride to New York City to board the vessel, the Ile-de-France. Also at that particular time, besides the Ile-de-France, also Queen Mary, but we were on the Ile-de-France. And it took our ship 10 days from New York to Glasgow. Normally the trip should have taken only 5 days, but because of enemy submarines, we zigzagged, and we took us 10 days to get there. Now, the 9th Traffic Regulating Group, which I was part of, originally we had 30 officers and 300 enlisted men. When I got in England, I worked in a message center at Wilton for a while because we were waiting to go over to France. And that was interesting because we knew when D-Day was going to be very approaching. As you know, D-Day was June 6, 1944. And after our people established a foothold in Normandy, then they went on to St. Lo, France. And a big battle ensued in St. Lo, and our people were successful. And once they were successful, they started driving eastward toward Germany. Now all of a need came for our unit to coordinate the movements of shipments of freight, ammunition, petroleum, rations, whatever they needed. We had to make sure that we moved it along. Also, we had to move wounded soldiers back to England. Our first assignment in France was, we worked at a airline strip. And there they brought in food and took back wounded soldiers. Now, our unit squad consisted of 1 officer and 8 men. We were separated. What would happen is that we had sections from our group all over France and Germany to expedite. So we knew who we were talking to, and it worked very well. Our next shipment was in Lerville, France, where shipments were coming in, and after boxcars were unloaded, German soldiers POWs were loaded into them, and they were taken back to Le Havre Airport, and from there either to England or the USA, I don't know. Because armies were moving rapidly through France, we also moved rapidly. Fortunately, we were able, on our way to Belgium, we stopped the night at Paris. Fortunately, a German general did not damage or wreck the city like Hitler wanted. So we were very fortunate because everything was in good shape when we got there. As I say, we only spent the day and the night, but we did drink some champagne. In November 1944, my lieutenant and eight of my friends, enlisted men, we received orders to go to a railroad depot in Arlon, Belgium. Arlon, Belgium was about 20 miles north of France and about 5 miles from Luxembourg. We got there, it was originally a commuter station, but since the war, there were no commuters running. But anyway, it was an engineering depot. So the engineers were having steel I-beams built, manufactured to be used to cross the Rhine River. So our primary job was to make certain the engineer had the necessary railroad equipment to move the equipment when he wanted it and toward the bridge. However, in the meantime, the Germans had different ideas. They were preparing for their last major offense in the Ardennes. That's a location between Germany and the Belgian border. Also, another problem was that our railroad engines used coal. And in addition to trying to round up other things for the troops, we had to worry where coal supply was, because without coal, we couldn't move, our engine couldn't go anyplace. During the period of December 17, 1944, through January 3, 1945, our log shows that we had a lot of bosses. We had 50 phone calls from colonels. 50 phone, 5 from colonels, 7 from majors, 11 from captains, 12 from lieutenants, and 21 from sergeants. They either gave us instructions or wanted information from us. We had a lot of bosses, but we got along well. On December 17, 1944, we had no knowledge that the German soldiers had surrounded or were about to surround our troops in Bastogne, Belgium, which was located about an hour from us. On December 17, 1944, the 8th Corps established a petroleum depot at Arlon, and the 1st Army established a rations depot. On December 18th, the Belgian Railroad authorities informed us that all train movements are canceled except Class 5 ammunition because of enemy action. On December 19th, our executive officer, Lieutenant Colonel Thomas, instructed us to retreat to either Longwy or Stenay, France, in case of emergency. Due to enemy action, we did not move, we stayed. On December 19th, we shipped a boxcar full of female German sympathizers to an undisclosed location in France. On December 22nd, a Colonel Shelton, 3rd Army liaison officer, came to our office, and he said he would be in the lobby and would be waiting for an important phone call and to call him. We had the only Army telephone working at the time. A Captain Brodsky also came to our office and informed us he was a 3rd Army liaison officer and would oversee our activities. December 23rd, we were ordered by General Ross that all our personnel must carry their weapons. Also, a Colonel Price ADSAC called and inquired about train crews, and we told him that we had 3. The day was very hectic. My office was full of officers waiting for instructions. They didn't know what to do with the men and the equipment they had, so they were in my office. However, that afternoon, a German plane came by and dropped a bomb. The I-beams that we had on track, ready to go toward Germany, was demolished. Fortunately, one of the bombs did not expire, so it was bedded deep in between the tracks. And a colonel and I inspected it, and he had his men take care of it, make sure that wouldn't go off. At that particular day, my lieutenant was in France looking for a place in case we had to move to where we would be living. However, as I said, we did not move. On December 31, 1944, my Lieutenant Boyer was visiting the ration dump, which was across the track from our office, and another German plane came by and killed 3 soldiers and wounded 7 men. On January 1, 1944, again another plane staffed our area. However, they did not cause any casualties because the Army had set up anti-aircraft batteries at both ends of the railroad platform. So that's shoot them away a little bit. And also, at this time, only Americans, railroad workers, were manning our trains because the Belgian soldiers, the Belgian railroad workers, they all disappeared. Again, then when things settled down a little bit in Orléans, the Belgian commuter trains were running again, and railroad Belgian workers returned to work. And on March 7th, 1945, a Colonel Engard and Major Heenan of the 3rd Provost Marshal, he stopped by our office and thanked us for what we did during the battle. On March 8th, 1945, we entered Germany at the city of Trier. It seems our troops located a great deal of champagne that had been stored. We obtained a few bottles and celebrated. About this time, the Army issued orders that we were not to fraternize with the German people, especially girls. On VE Day, May 8, 1945, we were in Frankfurt, Germany. June 1945, our squad was assigned to work at a large marshalling area across the river from Mainz. I was assigned to work at the dispatch desk and to peruse yard checks of cars of freight. And I have loads of freight here. Freight, which was backed up. Carloads of freight, which was at this yard. So I and another one had to pick out some special cars because General Tito was giving our people trouble in Yugoslavia, and the U.S. Army needed certain ammunition to take care of that problem. And he's the same Marshal Tito who became President Tito of Yugoslavia. Our next assignment was in railroad station in Nuremberg, Germany, in July 1945. During this time, since there were a lot of displaced people that the Germans had working for them, they were on their way home because they had no other place to go, and they were in railroad boxcars, and they would stop in Nuremberg. The engine crew would be changed, and the people, and then we would be notified because there were so many displaced persons, they had no food. I would get a phone call, I would call a bakery, and I would have to bake bread. Then I would deliver it to them in the various cars that they were in, and then they would take off. However, on one particular day, a young lady had a baby, and she came up to my office crying. She says, "My baby has dysentery. I need some milk." Somehow I got her some milk, and she was very happy. So I was very pleased I was able to do a good deed. In August 1945, we worked at another Nuremberg railroad station, and here passenger cars would be spotted, and that evening troops that had time on their hand would go to Paris to have a good time. Our main function was to make sure the cars were clean and they had water. In September 1945, the War in the Pacific was over, and I had seniority, and I was transferred to an Army unit that had more seniority than my 9th Traffic Regulating Group to go home. However, that was easier said than done because I and about 1 million other troops wanted to go home. So we were in Kitzingen, Germany for 2 months because the English decided to pull their Queen Mary out of troop service and get it ready for domestic travel between the United States and England. As you know, we didn't have many airplanes travel between England and the United States in those days. Anyway, we were there for about 2 months, and finally, in November 1945, for 2 months we did absolutely nothing. We sailed, we went from Kitzingen, Germany down to Marseille, France in boxcars. And you can see here that we ate along the railroad track. Because when they changed crews, we got off and walked around because, it was the thing to do. And some of us had rations with us, and we would heat them on the fire along the track and eat them. And they had space where else we ate. But anyway, eventually we got down to Marseille, and our ship was the SS John Erickson. Now there were 10,000 of us on that ship, and the thing left the port, and it was out no more than a half hour from the port, and it broke down. So for 2 days, it had to repair the ship somehow, but we didn't get off the ship, we stayed on it. It took 12 days for that ship to go from Marseille to New York. I was discharged from the Army in December 15th, 1945. And my lieutenant was a very good guy. He got us good quarters. We had a beautiful home. Beautiful. I had a private bed for 4 months. I enjoyed myself. So we were very comfortable while we were working, but we worked 12-hour shifts at Arlon, but during the hectic season, we worked more than 12-hour shifts. It was 12 hours on, 12 hours off, but I worked longer than that. And for that, I was awarded for meritorious service, a Bronze Star, which I'm very pleased about. But it was a nice day. I mean, a nice tour, interesting. Paris was only maybe 10 days when we traveled from New York to Glasgow because our ship was zigzagged. And the other time that it was dangerous for us was during the Battle of the Bulge, which was about December of 1944. That covers most of my Army experience. As I say, I did not talk about my domestic experience because people are not interested in that, I don't believe. If you have any questions, I would be glad to answer them if I can.
Yes. While you were in the service, did you have any family back overseas? Did you have family back overseas waiting for you while you were in the wars?
In the United States?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I had family, yes.
And how did they deal with the fact that you were gone? Did they take it in a harsh way, or did they take it as?
Well, we corresponded. I had my sister and my mother corresponded with me frequently. However, once we were in England, we could not tell them where we were or what we were doing. Our letters were censored. In other words, whenever we wrote a letter, our lieutenant would have to read them. Very little confidentiality. He would read them and pass them off to be mailed. Anyway, but
I have a couple more. What was your original reaction when you heard about the Malmedy massacre?
The Malmedy, we did not hear about it, believe it or not.
You didn't?
No, we did not. You see, we didn't even know, for example, we were an hour away from Bastogne. We had no knowledge that our troops were going to be surrounded. The only knowledge we had was be careful of German soldiers in American uniforms. Other than that, we had no idea, and we were, and one of our sections or group of people in Liebermont, which was about 10 miles from Bastogne, they left their posts because of enemy action. Other than that, we had no knowledge of Malmedy at all. I mean, I heard about it afterwards, but we were too busy. We had no way of knowing what was taking place anyplace else. We were, as I say, we were working 12, 13 hours a day for about a month.
Okay, and while you were over there, did you experience anything that was really life-changing, like extremely, like one event, if you could name one event that really changed the way you felt?
Let me fix your microphone that came up. Did you understand her question?
Can you get a little closer, please?
Yeah, come on up. You got to speak a little bit louder because
Was there one event that really changed?
Well, I would say that for that week in Arlon, Belgium, I consider myself very fortunate to be able to walk away from what took place. Other than that, I would say my Army career was interesting. As I say, after hostilities were over, we had free time. I was able to go to Switzerland for a week because I was waiting for a ship. And for me to go to Switzerland, the Army gave us, permitted us to take $35. That's all we could take with us of American money into Switzerland because of currency, I controlled it. And they were able to, I spent the week at Army expense of the transportation and hotel and food. But for spending money, we were only allowed $35, which was interesting.
And during the Battle of the Bulge, I read in your biography that you transported gasoline to the troops during the Battle of the Bulge.
Yes.
You supplied the gasoline that the troops needed?
Well, yeah, you see, when we were in Arlon, first of all, it was a passenger and Arlon was a large passenger railroad station when we first got there. And of course, it was on the main line from France all the way up to Namur, Brussels, Antwerp. It went around, and also it went into Luxembourg, which was about 5 miles away. So that was where we were. Now, what was your question again?
You supplied the gasoline into the American troops during the Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah.
How did it feel to be a part of what really helped us?
Well, now
during
that
the battle?
As I say, we were not at the front line, but we were behind them, and we were doing everything we can to support them with troops and ammunition, rations, whatever they needed. I mean, because everybody backed up to us, and we were right there. And as I said before, we were not aware of what was going on at Bastogne. All we know is that we were told, be careful of German troops that may get away. And for the life of me, I don't understand if Bastogne was surrounded, why they didn't leave the surrounded troops there and go to Antwerp. But the weather was not that good, so therefore that may be a reason. But I still, in my mind, I think about it, I can't understand why they didn't do that, but they didn't. So anyway, it was interesting.
What I mainly want to know right now is with the Germans, they had a lack of gasoline supply, and that's why that was their major downfall in the Battle of the Bulge.
I would say so, yes.
And you're the complete opposite of what they needed.
Oh yes, by all means.
How did it feel that you really pulled?
Well, now that we see at the time, we were not aware of that. I mean, we were busy working, getting the people out back and forth. We had no knowledge, as they say, how close the Germans were to us. All we know that from my log, things were hectic. A lot was going on, and we had to carry our masks all of a sudden. We had to carry our guns. We went to work. We didn't carry our guns. But then we were told we had to have our weapons. So we knew something was going on, but specifically, not. Truthfully, I did not know. I mean, it was going on. All I know was there was a problem. We were bombed twice where there was casualties. I mean, I was knocked down one time when I was outside inspecting when the second bomb landed, I happened to be on the platform. I was inspecting an empty boxcar, which was going to be used to send 25 of our troops back to Verdun for training. You see, all of a sudden, the Army needed troops for their infantry. And they took 2 of our people from my squad of 8. It took 2, sent them back to France for training, and I never heard from them again. So that's how the situation was critical there for a while.
Was there ever an immediate time that you felt that your life was in danger and you felt that
Yes,
you
there
needed
was.
to get
I
out?
mean, yes, there was, because the planes were around us, and I know that my buddy Sergeant Missouri and I, we left our office and we walked up a hill because for a while. After that, that was on one occasion. Other than that, we were doing our work. As I say, when the first bomb came on the 23rd, I was not aware of it until it hit. When it landed on the 31st of December, it hit. I was not aware of it, except that my lieutenant came in all excited, and we had to make a report. Everything we did is in this log. Everything, every day to day. We had entries, as I say, we had people tell us what to do, and even after we had to keep track of the trains leaving, we monitored the trains, make sure that they had sufficient coal and water to take the troops north, or if they were taking hospital trains back to Paris at that particular time, because by that time they established hospitals in Paris, and if they had prisoners of war, they were loaded in boxcars and they were sent back someplace in France. But all we had to do was make sure our headquarters would call us, and they would assign a number like Maine 123, and we would have to know. We would have to make a notation. When Maine 123 came, we would make note in this book, and we would notify at an advanced section, let them know that our train passed. And other people further along the line also did the same thing. In other words, they didn't want to make sure that the train got stuck someplace without coal, without an engine. That was very important, and that worked both ways. With troops, prisoners of war, and hospital trains going one way, and supplies coming the other way. Now, of course, there also the Red Bull Express with its trucks, but we had nothing to do with them.
Okay. You said you spent a day and a half in Paris.
Yes.
How was that? How were the Parisians?
Well, you see, after we were finished at the depot, we had to, as I say, we were hop skipping through France. We would work a week at a railroad station and go. And as we moved, we had to go eastward toward Germany. So we bypassed for a day because we were on orders to go back to headquarters. Our headquarters was in Reims. Reims was across a little further away where they made champagne, incidentally. So we were able to stop one night and one day, but we couldn't stay much longer. By that time it had just been, Paris was freed in France in August of 1944, and we were there about a couple weeks later in September. So it was, French people were very glad to see us, and we all had a good time. And as I say, we spent the night and the day, and that's all we could spend because we had to go to Reims to find out where our next assignment would be.
When before the war, how old were you when you enlisted, and why did you enlist?
I didn't enlist. I was drafted I was 22 years old, 1942.
What were you doing at the time?
I was working for a trucking company. I was a dispatcher for a trucking company. I had transportation experience. I had already graduated from Drake College, so I had business experience, so I was working in the trucking company. And that was the reason why I was able to transfer from the Signal Corps, where I was first put in January of 1944. I transferred from Signal Corps to Transportation Corps, and they were glad to accept my transfer. But unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way you want to call it, I was with transportation for trucks, and all of my Army experience after other than being at one airstrip in France, was all with railroads. So it's unusual.
What was life like when you got drafted?
Yes.
What was the mood like in America towards being in the military?
Well, everyone was concerned about it because everyone thinks you're going to go in the Army and you're going to go right up to the front right away. They think you're going to kill, but they don't realize that you go to a reception center, then you go someplace else, you go for training and so forth and so on, and they choose you, the Army chooses you for whatever branch of service they think you are better qualified for. Now, a big tall guy like me, I don't think they would put me in the infantry. But anyway, I was hoping to go to signal training school, they were radio school in Camp Crowder. However, because of my clerical and business experience, I worked at the regimental headquarters. And that was wonderful because, we worked at a desk. We knew everything was going on in our regiment. So that was, as I say, I was there for about almost a year. And I worked with the adjutant, majors, and we first got in there and we were all privates. And right away they made us a private first class. Now that meant that we got a $4 raise a month. And then about 6 months later we got a new colonel, commanding officer, and he noticed that all his soldiers in regimental headquarters were all privates, had no stripes on. So he took care of that right away. He promoted me to a T4. I was never a corporal. And one of the fellows was made chief clerk. He became a staff sergeant. So that was very good. In those days, the Army received $50 a month. A first class, private first class got $54 a month. A corporal got $66 a month. A sergeant got $78 a month. A staff sergeant got $96 a month. A technical sergeant, which was my last rank, $114 a month. And a master sergeant, first Army, or first sergeant, got $136 a month. I think a lieutenant got a little more over $200 a month. So that's not a lot of money. But
when the war was finally over, when it was all said and done, did you bear any resentment towards the Germans or the German army or the German people?
did I what?
Did you have any resentment towards the German people?
Not in a true sense, no, because not really, because well, you didn't interact with them, and we did while we were waiting for 2 months waiting for our ship. We went to their taverns and we saw the German people, and we commingled with them to a degree. But because in the beginning we were told we could not fraternize, and that law was not rescinded for quite a while. I would say it was almost a year before it rescinded, because we had to deal with the German people, because there were some German people that suffered also. I mean, I remember traveling by Jeep toward our destination in Germany, that I saw thousands at different times, or hundreds, of displaced persons or Germans returning, going westward to their homes. So, I mean, we felt sorry for them in a way, because they were displaced. But I was, when you're in the Army, you have to do what you're told to do.
Do you think, looking back, do you think your experience in the Army was a positive one?
Oh, I would say so, yes. It was, I'd say, I'm talking about things that happened over 60 years ago, and I'm talking to you like it happened a few days ago, with the help of this log. I mean, but yes, as long as President Roosevelt declared war, we had to do what we had to do. I mean, and I was at 22 years old. Pearl Harbor was in December of 1941. I was drafted in September 1942. It was only 9 months later. And there was some people volunteer, but I didn't volunteer. I mean, I had a job. I was earning $40 a week, believe it or not, in 1942, which was a lot of money in those days, because I had a responsible job with a truck company, because most of the older people being older than they were drafted.
All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add? We can.
I think I've covered it pretty much. I mean, I don't think that, as I say, These things happened 60 years ago, and I'm talking like it happened last month. But it was now that I think about it, it was a rewarding time. But some people, while in service, they got married. I did not get married. I got married a year after I came out of service. So for some people, the war was a handicap because they had their girlfriends, and some were, and they had to leave their wives and girlfriends. It was kind of tough. But I didn't have that problem, thank God. I mean, it was, you know, it's not the norm to go in service.
Yeah.
I mean, you get in a bus, you go down to Fort Dix. That was a very hectic day. I mean, you get off the train, you go in, you line up, you go into a room, and the first thing you take your shirt off, and you walk a couple of steps, and somebody's jabbing you with one arm, and give you a tetanus shot. You look at him, and somebody's jabbing you on the other side, gives you a typhoid shot. You look there, and you go another couple of steps, and somebody jabs you and gives you a smallpox shot. So then you go to, you go further, and they start giving you all your clothes. I mean, in my case, they didn't have trousers long enough for me. I had everything but my trousers. All my friends from all my neighbors and friends, they had all their equipment and clothes. I didn't, so I waited 2 weeks in Camp Crowder waiting for my trousers. Meantime, the week before, all of my friends shipped out, so it was a little lonely. But it was an experience because I was so tall.
That's funny. So you did all your training at Fort Dix?
No, I did my training Camp Crowder.
Camp Crowder.
Fort Dix was a reception center.
Okay.
And it was a 2-day trip to Camp Crowder where we got off, and that's where we did the training. And then I wanted to go to radio school because radio school was at Camp Crowder in Signal Corps, but because of my business experience in typing and what have you, they pulled me out of class. I think I was in clerical school for about 2 or 3 days when a sergeant major came down and says, look, we need 3 people for our regimental headquarters, and I was one of the ones who was chosen. So, again, I was very fortunate because my father was sent me to business school when I was 19 years old. So there again, I thank my father many times for that because my clerical experience helped me with my Army career.
Great. Well, I thank you for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Well, I hope I made it interesting for you.
I think so. I'm gonna turn everything off and take your microphone off, and we're gonna shut down here. But I'm going to ask you a couple of questions off camera, and then we're gonna get you on your way. All right. Grab all that for you.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah. Did I talk too much?
No, not. You're just fine.
Oh, the water dropped, unfortunately.
I'll get it, sir. Don't you worry.
Okay.
So who are you in this picture? Where are you at? Yeah.
I think there's a small picture too.
There's something there. Oh, wow.
This is the same room, this is where we ate. That's this picture.
Hey.
This was our close squad.
All right, guys, you can just shut everything down. Jenny, you can get out of here.
Okay.
Thank you for coming in. She did a good job. They had really good questions. Hey, Jim, go ahead and press stop on the record. In there.
Nick, just got
What?